Hello, and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, it's our special Father's Day edition. You know, so many of us got started on the water with our dads. Oh, there's been some uncles and some grandfathers and such, but man, there's just something special about fishing with my dad. I know I'll never forget, and I know a lot of our podcasters won't either. We're going to get their quick stories about that, along with the best fishing reports, starting over in Costa Rica at Nosara, Costa Rica, then hopping to Florida, coming down the East Coast, up the West Coast, and out the Panhandle, till we got all the news on what the fish are doing. This week's Florida Sportsman Action Spotter is brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. Oh, it's the best chum on earth, all right. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. By Young Boats, the finest in flats, bay, and offshore hybrids. By the Castaway Hat Co, the hat that's helping save our seas. And a new welcome to Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low prices every day. Our latest sponsor, we're certainly glad to have them. Each and every week, we start our podcast out in paradise. Doesn't get any better than this. And that's where we check in with one Craig Sutton. Craig, how's everything in Costa Rica?
Really good, Ricky. No more weather days, bunch of big marlin.
Woo!
A couple more of those big mahi, and I mean big mahi, but I'm talking in the 60-pound range.
Golly.
That's a stud, man. That's a horribly big fish.
Craig, let's stop. Okay, let's stop for just 1 second. And let's wind the clock back a year, okay? The last few years, you and I have been talking big mahi. We had some that I know were pushing 40 pounds. Hadn't this been a great year for monsters?
Yeah, definitely in Costa Rica. Better off Jacksonville for sure, but in Costa Rica, you know, we caught a bunch of big ones last year too. But this, as of late, it seems like we're catching more, but we haven't caught any big yellowfin. None of those 200 pounds.
Oh, well,
now, we had one yesterday that looked like it's probably 80 or 90 pounds, but no monsters.
Craig, you're being a little picky now. Did they have any marlin yesterday?
Yep.
Okay.
And I think it was Wednesday, we had a double marlin day on the harvester. The first one was a little small, probably 2-ish, but the second one looked like it might be 450 maybe. Big old blue. Big old blue. And there's sailfish mixed in with them too.
That's a good one. Do the sailfish seem to be getting a little more prevalent? Are they coming back a little bit?
No.
No?
No. Tuesdays, threesies. Every once in a while we'll have a 5 sailfish day. But there's critters mixed in with them, so you don't know whether it's just a time element or they're there, but they're not able to get time to get to the bait. I mean, the yellowfin, if it's so ravenous that the 40-pounders are hitting it as soon as it hits the water. So I think, and I know when I was there a couple of weeks ago, I saw a couple in the 200-pound class range, but the 40-pounders were just beating it to literally the bait was in the water for 30 seconds.
How about that? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. But it'd be nice for us to catch a couple of 200-pounders.
Oh, yeah. Always. Oh, yeah. I'm sure of that. Well, I got to tell you, that sounds like awfully good fishing to me. Now, you mentioned to me off the air, you're getting pretty darn booked up. If people are coming this summer, they better get on the stick, haven't they?
Boy, and 10 years ago, we were busy in these months, but nothing like the demand we've got the last few years. And it's hardcore fishing, guys that are coming fishing 4, 5, 6 days straight. Sometimes they'll fish 7, 8 days straight and stay 10. But yeah, they're dedicated, strictly fishing clients, and they're good quality anglers, and consequently they're satisfying their appetite.
Words out, buddy. Words out. Hey, Craig, real quick before you go, who taught you to fish?
You know, my dad got me into it when I was super young, and it's always because my dad died when I was 9, and so it's always kind of been a way for me to. Years ago, it was a way for me to kind of somewhat feel close to my dad, losing him so early. But he definitely set the hook on me and gave me this addiction that sometimes I wonder about myself. When you can't sleep, before you go fishing, and just one day after another, I'll get maybe 20, 30 minutes of sleep before I go fishing. So, I guess there's worse things in life.
How about you and I? Well, at least I'm pushing 70 years of age. Still can't sleep the night before a fishing trip. Buddy, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely, Ricky, and I'll be looking forward to it.
Craig Sutton from Nosara Paradise Fishing in Nosara, Costa Rica. You know what that means? It's time to hit the corner of Northeast Florida, my hometown, Jacksonville, and talk in with one David Voorhees. David, how are you?
Hey, Ricky, I'm doing good, buddy.
Glad to hear it. Oh, we've had some crazy weather this week. How's your fishing been?
The fishing's been outstanding. I tell you, we had a couple of interesting things this week happen. We had a little cold water come in off the ocean. That occurred around Tuesday or Wednesday of the week. And then the water was just absolutely some of the cleanest I've ever seen it. It was gin clear. And it dropped from around, it was up to about 86, 87. Then it dropped all the way down. I saw it get as low as 82, 83, which is quite a temperature drop. But it really fired these fish off. They really started feeding good, and a lot of guys were catching fish. So it wasn't just me, but we had some outstanding days this week, and we got to sight fish to some really big fish and some shallow water, which we normally don't get to see that, Rick, this time, up in Northeast Florida. Usually when we're fishing for the big bull reds and the big 30, 34, 35 inchers, we're usually fishing in deep water for those guys. We rarely really get to see them come up in shallow water. But with this really gin clear water, I picked some spots where I knew there were some sandbars and chickapit, and the water was so clear and came in on some of these spots and could actually see these big reds coming in there, and actually got to sight fish to them and hooked up on 3 or 4 really nice reds this week. The flounder bite's been steady. Been some good flounder. Trout's been sort of not so much. I mean, some days you'll get a few trout. You'll find a spot that's holding some trout. Actually, today we caught one of my biggest one of the year. We caught a 22-incher today, and it was a big female, and you could tell she'd already spawned out on that full moon, which occurred a few days ago. So, she was really thinned out. But all in all, the fishing's really been good. A lot of jacks, ladyfish, a lot of fish. Summer's here. The water temperature, unfortunately, is starting to warm back up. And so it's going to make, I think, coming up on this new moon a little tougher bite.
Mm-hmm. I see. All right. Hey, Dave, you're a lot like me. Your dad probably got you into this stuff, this lifelong
absolutely.
This lifelong addiction we have. What's the first trip you remember that comes to mind when you think about fishing with your dad?
Well, as a kid, I grew up in Biloxi, Mississippi, and both my parents were from there. They both. I come from a long line of people who grew up in Biloxi, and back in the days, at one time, Biloxi was considered the seafood capital of the world. And there's a lot of seafood came out of that area, shrimp, oysters, you name it. And so, fishing was just a part of my family. I mean, we did it as a kid growing up. One of my first jobs was working in a seafood factory. I worked on my uncle's shrimp boats many a times, helping him out during the summer. But my fondest memory, my dad absolutely loved fishing, He was a blue-collar worker, wasn't a man, didn't have a boat. It was much later in life before he actually got his first boat. But when I was very young, he would go and rent these rowboats, and these were wooden rowboats. And he'd probably get a few dozen shrimp. He'd put them in the live well. Then the center seat in the boat, in the rowboat, had holes drilled in the bottom, and the water would come up, and you'd put your shrimp in there.
I remember.
And I can, to this day, Rick, I can still hear the sound of those, he could have rented a motor, but I don't think he had enough money, so he would just get the boat and row it. And we didn't go very far. There was a bridge, the old Biloxi Back Bay Bridge. We went under it, just beyond that, and we sat on a spot we had fished many a times before, one of his favorite spots. And it was a day I'll never forget. Rick, we started catching trout, and we finally, we pretty much, it was a day where, and this is no lie, we couldn't get another trout in the ice chest, chest.
Yep.
And it was, I couldn't even tell you how many we caught. And, I look back at those days and I go, wow, I would have never thought of keeping that many fish now. How things have changed, But, back then, nothing went to waste. We sat that day and we cleaned a lot of fish, but we gave a lot of fish away too that day. I'll never forget it. And it was one of my fondest memories. And I really enjoyed that, being on that rowboat, not having a motor. There wasn't no radio. It was just me and him. My big brother didn't go that day. And it was I'll never forget that day. It was one of the fondest fishing days I can remember with my dad. And there were many.
My dad was not a hardcore fisherman. He was a hardcore worker, and he supported the family. But, David, we rented a rowboat from Takoi Fish Camp. We rowed, just like you're talking about, to a fallen tree, and we did it probably 20 times. Most of the times we'd get a strike from a bass on a shiner and our line would break or our hook would come untied. We just weren't very sophisticated. But one day, David, I can still smell the holiday pipe tobacco. My dad was smoking a holiday pipe while we were back there, and we caught 4 bass from 2.5 to 6.5 pounds. And my dad caught that 6.5 pound bass on a shiner, and I've never seen him so happy. I mean, he was over the moon over that fish, and it was just great. It started me on a lifelong addiction, just like you're talking. Cap, we appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely, Rick. Looking forward to it, buddy.
Thank you, Captain David. Captain David Voorhees. All right, thanks to David Voorhees for a great Northeast Florida report. Now, let's check in Central Florida, see what Jimmy Ross is up to. How are you, my boy?
I'm doing fantastic on this Father's Day. How are you doing, Rick?
Happy Father's Day to you. Breakfast in bed this morning and only got better from there. But,
there you go.
Yep,
there you go.
Yep. Great church, great lunch. It was wonderful. All right, talk to me about your fishing, Jim. How's the weather been for you this week?
Weather's been pretty good. We did have one day where the wind kicked up just a little bit, made it a little choppy, but the bigger boats, it didn't give them a problem whatsoever. Just us guys that are running the smaller skiffs up and down the beaches. Scattered right now, you got scattered dolphins, some scattered wahoo, a couple of sailfish here and there. Not a whole lot of good stuff to talk about really on the trolling side. But what's really good right now is the deep dropping. The guys are doing really, really well after this last full moon. For whatever reason, those fish have just turned on out there, and they're really, really catching a lot of really quality fish out there. So that's one thing that if you get the opportunity to go with a friend or a buddy, or if you've got a boat that has the capability to do that, that's the big thing right now I'd recommend. The other thing that's going on is the tarpon are starting to pile up between Canaveral and Ponce, more towards Ponce than Canaveral, but there's some really good schools of them showing up right now. So if you guys and gals like to chase those Silver Kings, it's time to get out there. They're behind the shrimp boats out of Ponce. They're chasing bait balls up and down the beach between the False Cape, like right there at the pad 39A, 39B area, all the way down to, or all the way up to New Smyrna, Ponce Inlet. Live bait's obviously going to be your best bet. But the guys are actually catching them on croakers. You know, some of those fish they're not just pogie fish. They're not just sardine fish. They're not just pilchard fish. The guys are actually getting them on croakers too. So that's a good alternative, and they've been plentiful to be able to catch those things just, pretty much anywhere you are up and down the coast.
That's cool. Now it's getting awfully hot inshore, isn't it?
Yeah, the water temperatures. All the reports I got were, go hide after about 9:30. It's 9:45 in the morning because it doesn't get any better. The overhanging branches, mangrove trees and docks seem to be the ticket right now. First thing in the morning, the fish are cruising the shoreline's pretty good. But once it gets about 8:39, they're holing up and setting underneath those shady areas. and they're not really wanting to move too much. But you can catch them. Throw some, like a saltwater assassin paddle tail, skip it up under some of those structures. Or, if you've got some wind blowing, a little bit of wind, a little bit of current moving in your particular area, then you can throw some cut baits up in there and pull some of those redfish and snook and things like that out.
Gotcha. Hey, Jim, let me ask you a question. Who gave you this lifelong addiction?
Well, 3 people, really. My dad bought me my first true spinning rod. I had a couple of, push button bait cast, or not bait casters, but spin casters as a young child. But I really got the bug for my grandfather on my dad's side. He wasn't much of a fisherman. He liked to go out and smoke cigars and drink beer. And my grandmother would not let him do that at the house. So he would say, "Hey, I gotta go take the kid fishing."
Yeah, oh yeah.
So that's, so that was the excuse to get out and, put a Swisher Sweet in his mouth and light it up and drink him a PBR, if you will, And so that's kind of what got me out there. But he didn't care if I was fishing or if I was throwing sticks in the water or skipping clam shells or, whatever it happened to be. I was not allowed to step barefooted in the water on the oyster shells, because we used to have oyster shells all up and down the Banana River here, and kicking catfish was not allowed. No, not allowed. I caught plenty of catfish as a kid, and I used to try and kick them. He's like, "Do not do that.
Kick the catfish. No.
Do not kick the catfish." And you forget those things occasionally, especially when you become about a 9 or 10-year-old. You forget those things, and you're like, "I know what I'm doing." And you go to kick the catfish when he's not looking, and you put that catfish right through the toe of your tennis shoe.
You only do it once, so Jimmy.
Yeah, you do. You learn. And fortunately, we were close to the Cape Canaveral Hospital, and he threw me in the back of the truck and drove me over to the emergency exit, and they got that thing out of my toe, but I'd never kicked another catfish again. I can tell you that much.
I believe you. That's a great story. Thank God for grandfathers that can only drink beer and smoke cigars when they're fishing with the kids. You're right. For my dad, I was telling the story earlier. For my dad, it was holiday pipe tobacco. He'd bass fish with that pipe stuck in his mouth. Jimmy, please tell me we can check with you next week.
I look forward to it, Rick.
Thank you, Jim. Captain Jim Ross from the East Central section. Let's head on down to my favorite fishing village. That, of course, would be Stuart, Florida, where my boat, the 7, is currently based, and check in with one John Earhart. John, how are you?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here, Rick.
Well, we're glad to have you, my boy. Tell me about fishing in Stuart this week.
The offshore fishing in Stuart today was it was a little bit slow for sailfish. We've had some phenomenal sail fishing earlier in the week. It seems like it's kind of dropped off a little bit, but I think it's gonna heat back up in the following week or two. Maybe even tomorrow with the wind picking up just a little bit. But a lot of good action, 90 to 160 foot, as we would expect. Been fishing mostly live greenies, some smaller blue runners, and that's been getting a lot of sailfish bites. Been getting a few nice mahis. And we were kind of overrun with really large kingfish today. A lot of kingfish, 25 to 35 pounds. They're a lot of fun to catch, and they're great on the smoker, but they start to get a little bothersome when you're targeting sailfish only, and those kings keep clipping you off.
Yeah, no question about that. Now, inshore up here in Northeast Florida is getting awfully hot. It's become a first light and last light fishery, and then a night fishery. Are you seeing many guys fishing at night?
Right now at night, everybody's going out and targeting the mutton snappers on our near shore and offshore reefs. I mean, I'm seeing mutton snappers being caught on the 6 and 8 mile reef system, upwards of 20 pounds, and I've seen some over 20 pounds in the past week. So if you're a diehard nighttime fisherman and you want to put meat in the box, going out for big mangroves and big mutton snappers this week should definitely be on your to-do list.
Oh, that's cool. Hey, John, did your dad teach you to fish, and did he give you the bug, or where'd you get it?
Yeah, I got the bug from my dad, and he got the bug from his dad, so it's been a family tradition.
What's the first trip you think about when you remember fishing with your dad?
Believe it or not, I mean, I have so many trips I remember, but my favorite trip fishing with my dad was the first fishing charter we did together on the Mayhem. We went out there and we caught a 43-pound mahi along with several others that day. And believe it or not, it was in June. I want to say it was like June 10th. And for whatever reason, that memory will always be in my mind as one of my more enjoyable days fishing with my dad. We were on the charter and we were targeting mahi, and we went out and we caught, one of the bigger ones of the season. And not only was it epic for the clients, but it was a memory that was made for me and my dad fishing together, working together. It was a good thing on the Mayhem.
How about that? That is fantastic. I know that's a memory that you'll never forget, and I hope you get to pass a similar one down to your children when the time comes. Captain John, we appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yep, I'll talk to you next week, and let's look forward to more sailfish.
You got it. I'll be down there soon to help you out. Our thanks to John Earhart for a great Stewart report. A day off on sailfish today. They didn't bite. I don't think that'll last too long. These full moons in June and July are their peak spawning period. I think they'll be back hungry real soon. But let's head on down to Kokomo and check in with Cap Bean Storin. Brandon, how are you, my boy?
Good, Rick. How's it going?
Outstanding, buddy. Tell me how your fishing's been this week.
Fishing's been pretty good. Today was nice and easy. Just had a half day, and had a dad come out that wanted to get some meat for his family. We caught some really nice mangrove snappers and some sea trout. Nice season of living. But we've been having few more mahi show up. That's been still a little slow. Been some pretty good tuna on the humps. Still been a few snappers around offshore. Backcountry, it's been a pretty good snook fight. Tarpon still kind of mediocre, but you can still get a shot at a few. That's kind of how it's been down here.
Is there any bone fishing on the flats going on this time of year down there, Brandon?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, there's been really healthy numbers of permits and bonefish on the flats. There's been a lot of guides who are equipped for fly fishing but have not been doing a ton of fly fishing charters, who are now been doing a lot more fly fishing charters because of how many shots at permit they have each day. So it's really cool to see. That's probably the hottest thing on the flats right now. Is they're seeing a lot of good permit on the flats.
Wow, that's the ultimate flats fish, isn't it? Is to get a permit on the flats. It
really is.
Yeah, that's way cool. Hey, Brandon, did your dad give you this addiction that we call fishing? Is that where you got it?
He sure did. He sure did. I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland. We had an 18-foot Sea Pro. We call it the Stowaway because our last name is Storin. I will say one of the best fishing memories we had was when I was young up there. We used to try to go for rockfish, or some people call it stripers.
Right.
Striped bass. And it was trophy season and really cold, because trophy season, back then it was like March, April, sometimes late February, March, April. And, up in Maryland, it's still cold, still very cold, We're all bundled up. Well, we had a nice big trophy striper on, all right? And the striper started getting a little frantic next to the boat. And I must have been like 9 years old, if that. And my dad went overboard trying to net the fish. And it was rougher than all hell. And I'm like 9 years old. There's my dad drifting away from the boat. I'm like, what do I do? I think I threw a rope real quick, or he swam to the boat. And, that was a really scary moment for both of us, when you're in a little bit of a panic situation, you're only 9 years old, you're like, oh my God, what's going on? And, it's freezing cold and you're wearing 2-3 layers of pants and a heavy jacket, and that gets saturated and heavy so quick, so that was probably, one of the wildest, early on fishing memories I have. But he got me started fishing just for little largemouth bass in the lake, and when I was 2-3 years old, and I was hooked ever since. He said my first 3 words was mama, dada, and ish.
I like it. Hey, but the problem is you didn't finish the story. Did you get the trophy bass, or did you lose it?
No, we didn't get the trophy bass. No, he got away. He got away. The whole umbrella rig broke. It was like a $50 rig, whatever. No.
Well, in that case,
I got my dad. We didn't get the fish, but I got my dad back.
Well, that's probably more important, but in this case, we will now call that striper the first 100-pounder because we can't prove otherwise, right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, Brandon. Thanks so much for a great report. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely. I'll be here next week.
All right, Captain Bean Storin from Alamorada. That means it's time to head west. But before we go, let's get a word from D.O.A. Lures. I recently had a chance to stop by D.O.A. World Headquarters in Stuart, Florida. I was not the least bit surprised to see company founder Mark Nichols hard at work on a new fish-catching invention. What was surprising to me was he was working on the original D.O.A. shrimp, the same shrimp he patented in 1985. The stealthiest bait ever made, the only bait to land so subtly that spooky fish will never hear it coming. It was getting Mark's full attention. "What are you doing?" was the obvious question. Mark looked at me sideways. "Hey, I've never stopped working on the shrimp, dude. It's got to catch more fish every year, so I've got to make each one better than the last. I've got all the production in-house now, and that means today's 3- and 4-inch shrimp are consistently the best we've ever built. You know what? I get it now. The D.O.A. shrimp that fooled 1 million fish back in 1985 has got to keep up with the times to keep making your fishing better. Well, let me tell you, the fish are spookier than ever, and the 2022 version of the D.O.A. shrimp is the stealthiest, most lifelike, and deadliest bait you can throw. All right, time to hit 10,000 islands and check in with one Steve Dahl. Steve, how are you?
We're doing great this week. Absolutely great.
Good
How
deal.
about you?
How's the fishing been?
You know, it's toasty.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You know, the heat wave has been on us about 10 days now, and water temps are probably some of the highest I've seen. You know, some of the backcountry waters are approaching 90 degrees.
Wow.
And, I'm this time of year when I start to see that. It doesn't happen every year, but this year we're seeing it very early. I kind of give the backwater a break, and if you have the opportunity to do so, I mean, fish are still there, but the stress you're going to put on fish, I think, you know, once you start, you know, flirting with that 90-degree mark, I personally just don't think there's a ton of dissolved oxygen back there, and or enough, you know, to kind of put fish through some strain, if you will. So I kind of leave them alone a little bit, the redfish and the snook, and what I might fish some, you know, evening stuff if the storms cooperate, or, you know, right at first light. I don't think it's necessarily a problem. But if you start getting those like lunchtime, you know, water temp highs in those upper 80s, I kind of leave those fish alone. I just think it stresses them out. So that's okay, because we got tons of opportunity going on nearshore waters and offshore waters. Nearshore, the snapper bite's about as good as it gets right now. Mangroves, lanes, keep talking about these yellowtails that keep showing up. They're getting slightly bigger, which is good, even, you know, in the last 6 months. So starting to see that bite do really well. The cobia and the permit are just everywhere. I hate to tell people that, but I'm not kidding. I've seen probably, you know, just in milk runs of spots this week, maybe fishing 12 to 15 different you know, wrecks and reefs. I've probably seen permit and cobia together on probably 90% of those.
Wow.
And that's regardless of relief. And you always hear me talk about relief, you know, meaning how high the structure comes off the bottom of the water, from the bottom up to in the water column. That's generally where you know, want to find those permits, and then the cobia are really like that as well. It doesn't really matter right now. We're finding them on rock formations and rubble, and, you know, it's crazy, and it's awesome. I'm having a really good time the last week. So nearshore bite's doing really good, and obviously the offshore bite, everybody's concerned. You know, we're 2 days into the American red snapper bite, and that's kind of the focus. Everybody's making long runs. The winds have been very calm, which is, knock on wood, hopefully that continues. Obviously, you got to be conscious of the offshore storms this time of year. But if you plan it correctly, fish ledges, in our area, you got to make quite a long run to, you know, get these fish. But once you get there, they're abundant and bigger than they have been.
Oh,
so
that's
every
fantastic.
they seem to get bigger. So
yeah, that's everywhere, Steve. And I don't know. Yep. I mean, our management is so far behind what reality is, and
they are.
You know, it's painful, and I don't want to bring anybody down on Father's Day talking about that. Did your dad hook you on this lifelong addiction we have?
You know, I was unfortunate. I lost my dad when I was really young, but I was blessed that I had someone come into my life that in the really important years of my life, at least I feel, and still to this day, has become my adoptive father, if you will. And I look at him, you know, just as a dad. And we have he's had a huge impact on my fishing career. And we, at this point in our lives, we are all about the competitive nature of you know, fishing. I mean, it is the constant banter in the boat. I do that with really good clients all the time. I like to, you know, cut it up and do that, but no one takes the place of this man as far as, you know, just razzing each other. And, you know, those are memories I'm never going to absolutely forget.
Yep.
And he's proud, you know, he loves to, we're out together. He always introduces me as a captain and that I fish, and, you know, I fish for a while, and then he lets everybody, his favorite quote is he always says, I taught him everything he knows about fishing. And then he pauses and he says, but not everything I know.
I up here, Steve, we call those sea daddies. Those are our sea daddies. And I had one, and I was blessed with one, and I'll never forget, Steve, the day I came home from passing my captain's test. He gave me some advice that I'll never forget. He said, now, you're going to get in trouble. He said, if you do it long enough, you're going to get in trouble. He said, nobody's in serious trouble until somebody panics. He said, there's always a way out of your situation. Now you're the captain. You have to find it. Just don't panic. And I think he was absolutely right. But
that's true.
And you're right. What a role model he was to me, and taking him fishing real quickly. Later, after he contracted Parkinson's and was quite sick, I became the captain of a 42-foot Cabo, or 43, and he had never been healthy enough for me to take down to show it to him. And one day, I said, Big Daddy, I'm going down to the boat. Do you want to go? And he said, yeah, I want to see it. So we go down there, and we lift him into the fighting chair, and he's sitting in the fighting chair, and somebody comes down the dock that recognizes him from chartering him 40 or 50 years earlier. Hey, are you Captain Fred Morrow? Well, his chest puffs up, you know, and yes, I am, you know, and this is my son's boat, you know, and he said, would you like to come aboard? And of course we wanted to have his friends on board. So they came on board, and we all went in the cabin, and we sat him down in the cabin. He looks over and he says, in my son's cabin, we have a flat screen TV. We were always too busy catching fish to watch TV on my boat. I thought that was one of my favorite quotes ever. Thank you, Absolutely. Steve. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week. Captain Steve Dahl.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. What? Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, you know, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore-offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat Facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Our thanks to Steve Dahl for a great 10,000 Islands report. Now, let's move into Southwest Florida and check in with one Greg Stemper. Greg, you might have noticed it's hot outside.
Well, it's actually raining right now, so we're only at 78, so that's pretty good for us. It has been in the low 90s all week, but I got to be honest with you, the guys who went offshore this week had really good weather all week long for those red snapper.
Oh, good.
And they limited it out very easily. The live pinfish seems to be their best bait, but I'm pretty sure you could drop about anything down there and get those things to bite right now. Their bycatch continues to be all kinds of groupers. The gag groupers are big. A lot of mutton snappers showing up, some really nice yellowtail. I saw a yellowtail this week. That was probably 27, 28 inches. That's a big boy.
That's a monster.
Yep. And then, of course, they're catching those mangrove snappers as usual.
That's really good fishing. Yeah, now how long will your recreational red snapper season stay open?
They got 45 for the Rex. You know, the guys have had about a 2-week head start, and, of course, the commercial guys have been on it for a while. But I did notice this week that the guys that did very well, I'm talking about fish that were, close to 20 pounds, they're getting out there deeper now. Now there's more people going at it. So they're going out to that 150, 160 mark to get to those good-sized fish.
I'm going to play devil's advocate for just a minute, Greg, and understand this. But all these guys that say, we could fish forever on red snapper down, we'd never put a dent in them, there's so many. You need to know that even over in the Gulf where they're so plentiful, after a week, 10 days or so of everybody fishing, you start to see an effect, don't you?
Oh yeah, those fish get smart and they move out, but they're doing well now.
No doubt.
To give you the inside, the short side of the stick on my end, where we're in that very shallow water, we've had a lot of hot days with no wind, which means if you're not starting early right now, Rick, it's pretty brutal once you get to about 11, 12 o'clock. But the morning bite, the early morning bite for juvenile tarpon is on full speed. There's lots of fish. You can get them on all kinds of artificials. You can get them on flies. And, of course, if you want to throw something that's alive at them, like a nice little 3.5-inch pilchard, it's pretty easy pickings. But you got to do it early. After that, you got to go for your snook, your trout, and your redfish. The redfish bite did get good this week. It started to pick back up. And the snook were a little bit on the lockjaw side because they just went through their spawn. And they're going to come back in the back bays this coming week. I'm sure we'll talk about them more.
Gotcha. Sounds outstanding. Greg, thank you so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
You got it, Rick. Tight line.
All right, Captain Greg Stamper. Today's new outdoorsmen have so many advantages over us old-timers. I can only imagine how much easier it would have been to learn to fish and hunt if we had had Academy Sports and Outdoors back in my day. Well, let's get ready, Panama City, because your outdoor experience is about to get a whole lot better. That's because Academy Sports and Outdoors is on the way. They'll assemble your grill. They'll assemble your bike. They'll bore sight your gun. They'll spool your line. They'll exchange your propane, and they'll do it all at Academy's best low price guarantee. The store is coming in late July, but until then, you can still shop online at academy.com or go through Academy's mobile app. That's where you can sign up for all the digital ads and offers you'll need to enhance your outdoor experience. Academy Sports and Outdoors. Right stuff, low price, every day. That means it's West Central time, and that means Ray Markham. Ray, how we doing?
Fantastic. Sit right in the middle of the thunderstorm right now.
We get those in Florida this time of year. I've noticed that.
Oh, yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, we do.
Tell me how your fishing was this week.
Actually, it's pretty decent. Trout action's picking up. Even though we've had some heat, extreme heat. We're looking at days that we're in the feels like 112, that kind of thing. You got to fish deeper, or fish really early, or really late if you want to get out and do that. And it's kind of reminds me of when I was a little kid. My dad used to take me fishing, and it didn't matter whether it's thunderstorm or not, we were still fishing.
Uh-huh.
and I was probably about maybe 4 or 5 when I was trying to learn how to use a bait caster. And we had some, I guess it was Dacron line on the reels back then. But they're not only knuckle busters, but they were just horrible things. I mean, they had some of the worst backlashes you could ever imagine. But we would go out places, and even as lame as I was trying to learn to cast, I was throwing jigs and plugs and things like that. Never used live bait back then, but we caught fish. I mean, we caught a ton of fish. And it made me think about the times when I was growing up and what the water was like. It was crystal clear everywhere in Tampa Bay that you went.
Wow.
I mean, you could see the bottom in 40 feet of water, 45 feet of water in where the ship channel is now and that kind of thing. And it just makes me just want to cry when I go out and look at the water in comparison to what it was like back then. But it made me think about, fishing with my dad and how great the fishing was back then, and just really wish we had it back again. And it's going to take a whole lot of work for that to happen. So, but, that just kind of made me reflect on what it was like back then. But, that isn't the only thing we got going on. We got a lot of good things going on. The snook fishery seems to be in really good shape. Tarpon has just been absolutely crazy coming off that full moon. And the guys that are getting offshore, I mean, I haven't heard a single complaint from any of them. They're getting red grouper, gag grouper, scamp. Most of those guys are fishing deep stuff, anywhere from about 130 to about 200 or 250 right in there. But they're getting out deep. The guys that are really getting out deep, they're actually getting into a few sailfish, some dolphin. I've heard of a couple of wahoo being caught, quite a few blackfin tuna. So nobody's really complaining about much of anything. I'm just hoping for more redfish myself. So I can get out and maybe test a drag or two out here.
Won't be long. All right, Cap, that's a great report. We appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yeah, buddy. If I don't get struck by lightning, we'll be all good.
All right. Make it through one more thunderstorm, will you? We'll talk with you next week. Thank you, Ray.
We'll you later.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
buddy. It's time to head on up into the Big Bend to check with William Toney. But before we do that, let's get a word from the Castaway Hat Company. I'll bet you don't even remember the day all us cool kids would rub baby oil mixed with iodine to help us get even darker in the summertime. Being sunburnt was cool, and even if you weren't a surfing guide, you sure looked the part. Ho-ho. If a lot of us paid the price for our vanity, we never knew the skin problem and health damage that awaited us. Today's fishermen have the option of being so much healthier in the sun than we ever thought of, thanks in no small part to the Castaway Hat Company, who not only provides our podcasters with Castaway straw hats, but they make the coolest prints on the undersides of the brims that you ever saw. You may think your bimini top or T-top blocks the sun, but as an awful lot of us OGs can tell you, you can't have enough protection from sun damage. So do what we do. Put on the sunblock and put on your Castaway straw hat. You'll look the part of today's best anglers, and you'll even be helping the environment. For each Castaway hat sold, the Castaway Hat Company will take 1 pound of trash out of the waterways in Florida. Hey, you need to check out us old guys with the lifetime on the water and learn a few things about straw hats. Go to CastawayHatCompany.com and get your best sun protection today. Castaway Hat Company, a hat for every adventure. All right, head on up into Big Bend. It's William Toney time. He's a 4th generation fishing guide. Bet he's got a story for Father's Day. William, how are you?
Doing good, buddy. We finally got a little break from the heat and actually had some rain here, early in the week. So it looks like that's going to help us out because our water temps were hitting about 90 degrees this past week.
Ooh, that's hot.
And it put a lot of stuff running for deep water.
I bet.
So inshore, I can tell you, if you'd like to catch some trout,
you want to be down south near Chesapeake Channel in that deep water off North Channel Black Rock, fishing the edges of it, because as soon as it gets about 8:30 or 9 in the morning, it's game over. Now, another inshore fish, and it's an obscure one, if you like to catch silver trout, sand trouts, what we call them here, up toward the Barge Canal in Crystal River, there's a place called the Hump. So there's a big sandbar right there that runs off the south side of the intake canal. And right now, if you got a little jig, or you can use the shrimp on a jig head, you can catch those silver trout about as fast as you can throw them in. And there's, I think, is a boat limit of 50, but you're going to be silly if you're going to keep that many. But some of them are maybe 12, 14 inches. So, it's good inshore action, and it's good eating little fish. So keep what you can eat and throw the rest back and let the kids have a good time.
It is indeed a good eating little fish. We get them over here, catch them off my dock the night before my wedding, my bachelor party night. My best man and I stood on my dock and caught 132 of them.
Oh, man.
It was on a Saturday night. I got married on a Sunday. We drove all over Mayport on Sunday trying to find a place that would buy our silver trout because I needed money for the honeymoon.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Absolutely true story. Hey, William, it's Father's Day, and I know that you've got a long tradition in Homosassa. What comes to mind first when you think about fishing with your dad?
My dad and I, we worked a lot in boats together, former gillnet fisherman for mullet and everything on the water in between. But something I always think about, my dad and I always shared together besides hunting, was we loved the bass fish.
Uh-huh.
And people don't think about Homosassa bass fishing, but back in the day when we didn't have a lot of saltwater intrusion, we had a great bass fishery. So I was really horrible in math in my middle school grade years. I was really bad at it.
You and I have that in common.
So my dad come up with this plan. Every week when we had our final week math test, if I aced it, he would let me go down to this place called John Rexall Drugs, had a little fishing section in there, and buy me whatever bass plug I wanted. So I started acing those math tests, but the better part was when he got off work and we were done, we'd go fish those evenings and use a lot of Dalton specials, some Devil horses, and, the little Rapala black and silvers. And I remember that.
No, I never heard of it.
So, me and dad would just go and take turns, rowing the boat, and we'd cast, and we caught a lot of fish on top waters. And that's something I always remember, and I'm still lucky enough, man, to have my dad. He lives right across the road from me, so I get to see him almost every day.
How good is that? That's fantastic. And my adopted son, who happens to be the editor of our podcast, he and I love to put my little 16-foot Ginu in the creeks around here. We call them ditch pickles. And we throw Rapalas and we catch these little 2-pound ditch pickles. A big one would be 2 pounds, but they're fun.
That's a blast.
You never get over bass fishing if you're a true fisherman. You never get over it.
Nope, and just a fun fighting fish, but that was my, something I always think about my dad and I.
Wonderful story, William. Thank you so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be right here in downtown Homosassa.
You got it. Captain William Toney. Our thanks to William Toney for a great Big Bend report. I know how much he loved fishing with his dad. Let's head out west and check in with Captain Tyler Massey in the Destin, Pensacola area. How are you, Tyler?
I'm doing well, Rick. How are you guys?
Good. How's your fishing?
Fishing's been pretty good. We've had some excellent weather. Our red snapper season opened up, and that's going to be the main focus for most people. Typically we're coming to the end of the snapper season for the recreational fishermen. It usually closes at the beginning of July. It is getting hot. The fish are kind of already in that hot water mode where you got to go down in your tackle size a little bit sometimes, and live bait's working really nice. So just red snapper's been our main focus. Fish knocker rigs, fish light leader if you can get away with it, live bait, all that stuff's working really well right now.
Oh, good deal. Inshore kind of tough right now. Is the water getting too hot, or are they doing something?
Our water's in the upper 80s right now, and we've had 100-degree weather for a while. So It's been hot, but there's a lot of Spanish mackerel around, close on the beach. Guys here are speckled trout fishing. It's either early or late right now. Middle of the day is going to be tough. Redfish are doing okay. Middle of the day, just fish under, shaded docks and that kind of stuff. Live shrimp, on a jig head, live, bull minnow, any kind of live fish bait or live shrimp, and pitch it under the docks into the shade.
Okay. All right. Now it's not long till your blue water season really kicks off. Is it happening yet?
No, it's getting pretty good. A lot of the guys are, wahoo are biting pretty good. Right there around our edge, about 27 miles offshore, is where they're starting to see some wahoos. Trolling your regular lip plugs or you could troll a weighted islander spread, that kind of thing too. So that's doing pretty good. And then the guys that are running further are catching some blue marlins, some mahis, and that kind of stuff. So it's been pretty good lately.
Good deal. Tyler, did you get your addiction for fishing from your dad?
Absolutely, I did. I mean, fishing's all I ever did when I grew up. I didn't, and my dad would take me every weekend. I didn't want to play sports or anything because I'd rather go fishing. And, it seems like common with a lot of my friends too have the same, passion and job that I do. But yeah, my dad definitely started us, before we could even, really hold a fishing rod, we were out there with him. And then, all of our best memories are from a fishing trip or something we caught or we went fishing somewhere. So it's definitely where it started.
Oh, that's fantastic. I know a lot of us have been giving it that gift and hope to pass it on to our next generation. Tyler, I appreciate it ever so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
We'll be here, Rick. We'll see you.
Okay, Captain Tyler Massey. It's been a lot of fun going around Florida tonight, talking with their guys about their dads, and most of them are dads now, and we're working awfully hard. I know I am. I've now accomplished the feat of I have 9 grandsons. All 9 of them have caught their first sailfish with me, so that's something that I will take to my grave with me, right along with dreaming about that 6.5-pound bass that my dad caught when I was knee-high to a grasshopper. I got to tell you, folks, that our fishing is going to get a little tough as we continue to get into this very hot summer. Now, we've got a lot of sailfish spawn to look forward to in the rest of June and July. Tarpon are everywhere. Everybody seems happy about that. I was awfully pleased to get the word from Steve Dahl that cobia were all over the place down there. Hadn't been a good cobia year, and hopefully we can get enough of a foothold with the new regulations coming out on cobia that we can rebuild that stock maybe a little faster than we hoped. Inshore, you got to be first light, last light, or you got to switch over to night fishing to be successful. That looks pretty obvious just about everywhere. But you know what? It's been fun just the same. And there's one thing you can count on. We'll be back to bring you another podcast next week about how the fishing's going in Florida. It'll be brought to you by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum. Oh, it's the best chum on earth, all right. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, it's the unfair advantage. By Young Boats, you want the finest in flats, bay, and offshore hybrids, you need to check out youngboats.com. By Castaway Hat Co, the hats that help and save our seas. And by Academy Sports and Outdoors, the right stuff, the low price, every day. For Florida Sportsman Magazine, until next week, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and I'll see you on the rip.